Is our perception of life simply our view out the window of a train? Calvin Carlyle, K.C. Jones, like all the others in the passenger car, looked out the window of the fast-moving locomotive, but the view didn't interest him. All he could think about was Julie. He thought about how they had met. He was a junior account executive at an advertising agency working on a proposal for Amtrak. His idea was to promote the vistas available only by rail travel, and Julie was a freelance photographer with an impressive portfolio of landscape art. He would include some of her work in the proposal and, if they got the contract, she would ride the rails and create original art for the Amtrak campaign. But he didn't get the Amtrak contract, it went to another agency pushing on-time rail service. KC thought nothing could be more boring than train schedules. What he did get for his efforts, however, was a wife. Fittingly, he and Julie honeymooned on a train tour of national parks. For their first Christmas together, Julie gave him a model railroad set, which he set up in the spare bedroom of the apartment, promising he would find a new home for it when the room was needed for a child. As the train passed a beautiful vineyard and winery, KC thought how Julie would have loved to spend a day photographing it. A billboard displaying a bottle of wine reminded him of the day he suggested wine with dinner, and Julie said she would not be drinking any wine for a while, she was pregnant. A couple of weeks later, Julie said they should name the child Casey. Casey? That's my name, he replied. But she corrected him, she meant Casey, as in Casey Jr., or Casey Jones, and Casey is okay for a boy or a girl. The train passed a paint store and that reminded KC of the great paint debate, should they repaint the spare bedroom pink or blue? They eventually decided to wait for the ultrasound which was still a few months away. But there never was an ultrasound. One evening he came home to find Julie sitting alone in the dark living room. She had had a miscarriage. There would be no KC Jr. He would never repaint the spare bedroom. He sat next to her in the dark and held her hand, not knowing what to say. Maybe there is nothing to say at such a moment. Maybe just holding hands is all you can do, and all that is needed. The train was passing through a housing development and that reminded KC of better times. He had received a promotion to account manager at the agency. His boss had even told him he was on the fast track to a partnership. His increased salary would enable them to save for a house in the suburbs. And a little later, the train passed a farmhouse, reminding him of an even happier time. Julie had signed a contract for a calendar, 18 new landscape shots, with a guarantee of annual renewals if sales met expectations. The additional money would allow them to consider a small farmhouse with a couple acres, rather than a cookie-cutter track hoe.